Hello, and welcome to Soul Aligned CEO Podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Maury, and happy spring equinox. I am recording this on March 20th, 2025, the start of the astrological new year. We're going into Aries season. There's so much fire and new beginnings, an equal balance of light and dark today. And so I felt like it was the best day to start up recording again for this year. So, welcome. I'm really excited about the topic that has been coming through for me over the last few days. And it's one that I think applies to most everyone in some aspect or another within your own life. And that is the concept of surrendering. And so, in today's episode, we're going to dive in and talk about what it means to surrender. And then I'm going to share with you three very personal examples of how I have been working through this process of surrender this year. And I'm going to share with you what I've discovered about myself and what I have learned in that process. And then we're going to wrap up and just kind of talk through, what you can do and how you can really work towards the right balance of surrender in your life. So, welcome again. I'm so excited. All right. So, this concept of surrender, it may actually feel daunting because I think a lot of times, especially in the spiritual or consciousness community, you'll hear that word floating around like surrender, and like just let things occur. And there's often a connotation with that that's like, you're just surrendering everything and just trust and have faith and, everything is going to work out. And I think that that concept is valid, but it's a little bit difficult to kind of approach surrender from 0 to 60. So I think that there's a gradient level of varying degrees of surrender. And you have to know yourself and know your own heart and your own soul and your mind and how it all kind of comes together to give you the right balance of surrender. So, when I'm talking about surrendering today, my main focus is about letting go of over controlling, of to the every minute little detail, having to have everything go a certain way, having the outcome be exactly how you imagine it to be. And so, when I say surrender, I am really referring to loosening that grip a little bit, like you're squeezing so tight on, what you want. And there's nothing wrong with having wants and desires and passions. And, that's part of the fun of being here, right? But I think when you can take a step back and have those wants and desires and passions, but just loosen the grip on it a little bit. And so we're going to talk about some nuance to that because it might not be necessarily the what you want, but it might be when and how it occurs that might be different. And so if you can get into a mindset of surrendering, it will help you to allow what is ready for you and what can come in to come in without you kind of battling it, if that makes sense. All right. So, and again, I'm not talking about doing nothing because I think there's a connotation of, surrender, sit back and, let all the energy and universe, work together, which I think that's great in theory, but you also have to balance, the 3D aspects of everything. And we're physically here on this planet. And so, you have to have action to put things in motion. you can surrender a little bit to what the expected outcome is going to be. And I'm going to take you through some examples that I have really worked through already this year when it comes to surrender. So that's why I wanted to have this be the introductory episode for this 2025 season. All right, so 3 examples that I am going to talk through now are: one is about something professional, the second is about something personal and dating and relationships, and the third is about fitness and health. And so I'm going to share these examples with you first and let you know where I was at when I was not at a point of surrender. And then I want to take you through and kind of go over when I released all of the control and I finally allowed myself to surrender and clear that space to allow what was going to come in versus being so concentrated on, it needed to be the outcome that I had envisioned. So the first one is a professional example. So I have been in the process of writing a book. And this book is all about my true story of my entire awakening journey. Now, this has been a bit of an undertaking for me because it's very personal, obviously, to share. And I'm taking the book through in stages, really outlining before, during, and then after. And really the purpose of the book is for someone else who maybe is accustomed to a more mainstream or matrix awareness, and they might either abruptly or gradually be going through an awakening. And it's a story that can help them process and move through their own awakening. So I have been in the process of writing this book, and last year I was really dead set on having it published before I turned 50. I had this very arbitrary timeline in my mind. And so last summer I was very focused. I had the chapters all written out. I had an outline, but then when it came to actually telling the story, I was getting stuck. And then on top of that, because I had placed this arbitrary deadline on myself, I was then becoming I was almost forcing it. I would sit down and kind of make myself, write so many words, so many chapters, proofread, edit. And it got to the point where I was forcing it so much that I was not enjoying it anymore. And so towards the end of the year, I kind of had to take a step back. And so what I learned with this particular example of surrender is I needed to let go of this timeline, of the timing of I needed to have this published before I turned 50. That meant something to me, and I can't really explain it. But through the holidays and then through January and my birthday, and I turned 50 and I was still working on the book, I realized, it's going to be okay. Yes, I had set this goal and I really, really wanted it done. But more than the timing of wanting it done, I want it done in a way that feels really good. And I don't want to have to force it. And so I know this is kind of a very simple example, but it's just a very clear example of how I was letting an arbitrary timeline kind of dictate what I thought I needed to do. And so since I have taken a step back and I kind of stopped forcing myself to write, it's become more natural. And I actually have stumbled upon other things that I wouldn't have had I already kind of pushed myself to finish the book last year. I'm now a part of a Hay House writers community. I've been doing network events at book festivals. And so by surrendering, it has given me the opportunity to learn and connect and to really do more with this whole process than I thought I would. So that's the first example. The second example, so this one is a little bit more personal. Many of you know I'm single and I have been on this dating process, with dating apps and meeting people and going out on dates. And, I started this again last summer and I just really felt like I'm ready. Like I am ready to date. And I was so excited about it. And I kind of researched the different dating apps and I landed on one that I felt was a good fit for me and what I was looking for. And so I set up my profile, I started reaching out to guys on the app, sending messages, liking. And what I was finding is, no one was really responding or responding in the way that I wanted them to. And so I was getting frustrated because here I was letting the universe know, I'm ready. I am really at a good place. I really want to pursue a romantic relationship. And then nothing was showing up for me. So I was really getting frustrated. And I sat with it for several months, staying on the dating app and again, kind of forcing myself through the motions. And I realized that I had so many expectations of what I wanted to show up. Okay. And so I was controlling all of that. People would reach out to me, but maybe they weren't exactly the right fit for me. And I was just so very specific and so very controlling of who I was open and ready to meet. And so you feel that resistance, right? Like I was going into it like, oh, yes, I'm ready. But yet I was like squeezing and holding on to the process of, yes, I'm ready, but it can only be like this. And if it's not X, Y, and Z, then it's not right for me. And so I actually stepped back from the dating apps at the beginning of this year for a couple months because I needed to process why I was so disappointed and what was it that I was controlling. Because a lot of times, and you might say, well, Jenny, gosh, it's obvious. If you're only looking for X, Y, and Z, you're really controlling that. But put yourself in my position because if it's your life and you're the person experiencing it and feeling it, it's not always as obvious. Now, even though after I stepped back a little bit and kind of revisited how I was approaching it, I realized how much I was trying to control how it all went. So much so that even if I did meet someone that I felt like we had things in common and potentially similar lifestyles, but then I always wanted to do a video chat first before we would meet, before we would this. It's like I had it all like regimented out. And if something didn't align perfectly on this kind of regimented path that I was holding on to, then I wasn't interested. And so the universe, in a way, was responding to that because it was saying, okay, well, you're controlling this. You have such very specific things that you're looking for. We're trying as best as we can. And so I think the biggest takeaway from that situation was when I did finally surrender and I realized that it was a lot more relaxing. Like I didn't need to control it. I didn't need to be in that hardcore, like masculine energy, like organizing dates and making sure that, everything was ticked and tied. I could just be and be present. And so I've recently started back up and it's a much different experience now because I'm letting go of that grip that I had on the whole process. And I'm letting go of the expectations of really any outcome. If I'm looking at this process of, hey, I'm just here, I'm open and I'm interested in speaking with and getting to know other interesting people. And then let's see how the energy goes. And then let's go from there. But because I originally came into it with such a tight grip, like nothing was moving. And so I've noticed a difference even in the last 2 weeks back that the type of men that are reaching out to me, how the conversations are going, like everything is a lot more smooth and peaceful because I'm not gripping it. I'm not squeezing, the life out of it. And so I hope that that example is relatable. And the last example that I want to touch on is one that I was really working through surrounding fitness and just health and wellness. If you know me, you know that those topics are very important to me. And at the end of last year, I actually started working out with a personal trainer individually because I was and still am very focused and committed to being, at the highest fitness level that I am capable of. And I was working out with a trainer. I was consistently speed walking. I was stretching, yoga. Like I really had a program going on for the last few months of 2024. And so coming into 2025, I had this plan, right? Here I had been progressing at a certain cadence, and I was going to kick off the Gregorian New Year and kind of step it up a notch. I had a yoga challenge that I was going to be starting on January 2nd. I was going to be tracking and increasing my speed walking and really monitoring all of the statistics with that. And then I was also going to be trying a new Pilates studio here where I live. And so I was like all ready to go. I had all of these goals. I had all of these objectives. January 1st, I was ready to go. The morning of January 2nd, I woke up and I had some sort of respiratory, let's just say situation, some sort of pathogen or virus had hit me really hard. And I had not experienced something like that for almost 8 years. And I was at first like, oh gosh, it's just something simple. It'll get better in a couple days, and then I'll get right back on track to my program and my objectives. But it was actually something that took me several weeks to get fully healed and fully back to my full capacity to be able to kind of work out and exercise at the caliber that I was. And the first few days of this occurrence, I was angry. I mean, to be completely honest, it was even beyond frustrated. I was so angry at myself. Like, how could I have this happen to me like now? Like when I was at this like peak part of this kind of fitness journey that I was wanting to reach. And again, it was all kind of surrounding my 50th birthday. That was later in January. I was really pushing myself to this arbitrary timeline. And, I really had to come to terms with, okay, my body is telling me something different and I can't push myself right now. And although I was really disappointed, so this one is kind of a combination of that timing, the same as my writing the book by the certain deadline, and then also like a certain outcome and expectations of how it was going to go. So kind of similar to the dating. And so once I realized I have to work through this, like I just need to get myself and my whole respiratory system back up and running and healthy, like that priority shifted. And once I surrendered to that, I could feel myself starting to heal and get better. But it was still a process. And so I really hope with these examples that I have given you just some perspective on some real life occurrences. And so, again, this is this year that I've been going through these and real life examples of where I was just gripping a little bit too much. And I was trying to control all of the details and all of the outcomes. And there's nothing wrong with having goals and objectives. Like, I wanted to write my book. I wanted to start dating again. I wanted to get into a regimented fitness plan. Those are all wonderful. I think the thing that I lost sight of is, I had it so set in stone of when and how these things were going to occur that I didn't allow for any other possibilities. So like I mentioned with the book example, had I forced myself and pushed myself through it, I wouldn't necessarily have gotten involved with this writers community, which I really enjoy. I wouldn't have gotten exposed to networking and going to different book festivals and meeting other authors, which I really enjoy. And the same thing with the dating. Had I just kind of given up because the outcome wasn't working, and if I didn't see how I could step back and surrender, then I would miss out on the conversations and the interactions that I'm having now. And so, really, what I want you to take away from this episode is loosening that grip. And as I started the episode with, you have to decide what is the range of surrender that's comfortable for you. Because in different situations, you might be able to surrender fully and have, a vision and have the action that you're working towards, and you're able to very fully surrender and not be attached at all to the outcome. And then there might be other situations where that doesn't feel comfortable, and that's okay. And so you have to then consider, what level of surrender am I good with right now? Am I okay with surrendering the when, but I still want to be, kind of more involved and controlling of how? But I will say this, the more that you can, in combination, surrender the timing, the when, and surrender the how, it really opens up the space for things that you maybe couldn't even have imagined. Because if you are so set on a certain trajectory of this needs to be like this, then what if there's something even more extraordinary and even more wonderful that was kind of set and ready, on the sidelines, waiting to occur in your life once you release the grip of expecting it to be a certain way, or how it's going to happen, or even when it's going to happen. So catch yourself anytime you feel frustrated or in a space of wanting to control that outcome. You can have those hopes and dreams and passions and desires. There's nothing wrong with that. But do you allow yourself to have that blank slate on how it's going to come into you, and how is it going to occur, and when is it going to occur? For myself personally, the control that I've experienced in my entire lifetime revolves a lot about timing. And honestly, I think it's because we're in such a kind of results-driven society, right? Like, you're expected to do this, by then, by here, by now, and if you're not, you kind of feel your head spinning. But here's a little secret. All of this time and all of it is kind of an illusion, right? And so having all these arbitrary timelines and deadlines just cause more angst, and they cause so much more stress, and it's not necessary. Anytime that you feel frustrated or disappointed or wish that something was occurring differently or the timing was different, take a step back and ask yourself, what kind of grip do you have on the situation? Are you holding on to how it's supposed to be so tightly that you're not letting in other possibilities? And really consider stepping back a little bit and allowing yourself that grace and allowing yourself the space to surrender. And you might just be very surprised at what the universe has in store for you. All right. Well, I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. I hope that this concept of surrender resonates and is relatable to different aspects of your life. And I hope that the examples that I shared really helped to make the concept something that you can put into practice. I really appreciate your support of the podcast. I am excited to continue to dive into new episodes this year. I really want to focus more on being soul aligned from an entire lifestyle perspective. Yes, I am still an entrepreneur. I will always be an entrepreneur. But that's really only one facet of my life. And so I want to start having more conversations about that balance, about how we bring this concept of being soul aligned, with our bodies, with our mind and emotions into everything that we're doing in life. So not just professionally, with our families, relationships, health, wellness, hobbies, all of it. So I'm looking forward to interviewing new guests that want to have conversations about these topics and really talk about what being soul aligned means for them. And so if you are someone that would be interested and have an idea for an episode, definitely reach out to me. I would love to hear that idea and speak with you. And as always, I appreciate everyone's support on social media. Please follow the podcast, like and comment and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. It's on all major platforms and on YouTube as I start ramping up and putting out new episodes this year. All of that support means so very much to me. I really appreciate it. And I just want to say until next time, I wish you much peace, love, and joy as you pursue being soul aligned.